everyone, and welcome to Humans of Moving, a Supermove Original Series. I'm Ryan Marsh, your host, and I've got the awesome Tom Anderson, Vice President of Commercial Services for RCS Moving, on board with us today. So what's going on, Tom, man? How are you?
Nothing much. I'm great. It's Friday, 1 o'clock. We're almost there. We've made it through the week. I'm really excited to be a part of this podcast. It's an honor to come on. I know we've been talking for a little while now. And yeah, as you mentioned, I am Vice President of Commercial Sales for RCS Moving and Storage here out of the Northern Virginia area where I'm from. We have a footprint ranging from Northern Virginia down to the Carolinas, but I cover primarily this area as this is the area I know best.
Excellent. So it is just a touch after 1, so we've got 4 or 5 hours to go, and before we kind of
Yeah.
relax and dial into the weekend here. But before we kind of get rolling, obviously I know who RCS is. I know a lot of people out there know who RCS is, but just for some of the listeners that'll be kind of picking up and downloading the episode here, if you don't mind, kind of just a high level overview. Who is RCS Moving, and kind of what's their rich history in the moving industry? If we can kind of start there, and then I've got a couple more questions to pump your way here, but we can just kind of
Yeah.
just figure out, like, who's RCS, what do you do, how do you do it, and what's your guys' history in the industry?
Absolutely. So we typically go by RCS as the acronym, but of course it stands for something. It stands for Richmond Commercial Services, and we are based out of the greater Richmond area, owned by Alec Vazinilek and Harrison Vazinilek, two brothers in their 30s, early 30s. And they actually got an interesting start into the industry that got them to where they are today. Alec was a college football player at UVA, and they saw a need to assist fraternity and sorority members with relocations on campus. So typically it actually started, I believe it kind of paired up with like the wrestling team, and they saw a gap that needed to be filled. And so they started working on the weekends to make extra side cash in college, initially moving, students around campus, whether it be fraternities or sororities.
Yeah.
And eventually, as time progressed, they said, wow, this is this, huge industry. They got kind of into houses. And then they eventually found the commercial game, if you will. And after college, Alec moved back to Richmond, where he's from. And we got into the commercial moving space. We actually bought Richmond Commercial Services. It was initially D1 Moving and Storage because, UVA is a D1 team. And Richmond Commercial Services is a 30-plus year company, a company that is over 30 years old. And so the D1 bought RCS. And then since then, it is just exploded with exponential growth. Now we're in Northern Virginia. We also have locations in Raleigh, North Carolina. In addition to that, we're looking at some other things right now that are in the works, but it's just expanding at a rapid pace. And that's a little bit of the background. Harrison was initially running up here with me and some other folks, and then he expanded. Now he's head of the Charlotte office. As we now Matt Dodson is running our Northern Virginia office, and I'm kind of helping with everything there.
That's cool. I never got a chance to meet Alec or speak with him, but it's been a while, probably just over a month or so. I had a real cool
Yeah.
opportunity to chat with Harrison a couple times. Really, really bright dude. Really
Yes.
fun to talk to. I can see how you guys' growth has just been exponential. I can't really fathom what Alec's all about, but hopefully I get a chance to meet him someday, or maybe he can pop on here with us, or him and Harrison, or what have you. But it's a question I love to ask because obviously I spent 13 years in the moving industry, and it wasn't like I had a family that had a moving a company or a business, and really didn't know anything about the industry. So how I got into it is rather different than most folks, but I definitely want to ask, man, how the heck did you end up in the moving world? Like, what was your journey? And did you just wake up one day and say, I want to be, I want to be a mover? Or was there some family tied in? Or what's that journey look like for you, man? And especially on the commercial side of the house, because most people don't start in moving when it comes to the commercial side. Usually they're starting off as, estimators or move coordinators or whatever the case may be. But what's your journey looking like, man? This is really cool.
So I had a very unique entry point into the industry. I would go as far as to say maybe nobody else had quite the entry I had. So my father was a baseball coach many, many years. He coached my football team, my baseball team. And when I was a kid, he paired up with Vince Sperano, who is he was the vice president of JK Moving Services for 8 years. He is former now, he's gone into consulting. But I was playing baseball starting at about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. And he had just moved down from New York City. He was working in the printing business, and then he got a job at Office Movers prior to going to JK. And he was my dad's assistant coach. We needed an assistant coach. His son was on my team, and they just hit it off. And next thing you know, I mean, he coached all my teams, all my baseball teams, all my football teams, and going into college, I realized you're required to do an internship,
Yep.
and I needed an internship, and my I didn't really know who to turn to. My dad's in the direct mail marketing business. I didn't really want to ask him for an internship, or I kind of wanted to figure out my own path. So I thought, who do I know? What resources can I leverage? And I reached out to Vince, and they had an internship program at JK Moving Services, which is a titan here in the DC market, a great company. And I started out as an intern working for him. And I just, I never thought I'd wake up and, this is what I do with my career, but I always knew I wanted to do sales, whether it be tech sales or printing sales or whatever, solar sales. And so I realized early on, I was like, this is very niche. And I was running with a very elite crew early on, like shout out like Jim Stevens and Brian Martin and Cody Ryder, and just a lot of good guys who are industry veterans now.
You're doing some
And
good name dropping there, man. I love it.
yeah, really good guys. And so I
Absolutely.
learned early on, I was like, wow, these guys are doing this and they're doing it at a really high level. And it's a fun industry to be in when run correctly, and emphasis on run correctly because a lot of things can go wrong. But typically working under them, I realized early on, because I actually started as a marketing intern. And then I realized, wow, I want to go into sales, marketing sales. And I knew I wanted to do sales, but when I saw the sales side of things run, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And when I graduated college, I went right back into it, and I'm here today now.
That's awesome, man. Cool story. I was also a baseball guy. What position were you?
So I played third base and a little bit of shortstop, but I was more of a third base. I played like the hot corner.
I hated third base. I hated third. I was a left-hander too, right? But third base, man, you took some shots, you took some seeds right at you. I was a
Yeah,
left-handed pitcher, and when I wasn't pitching, I was over at first base. And hey, for some reason, first and third was completely different for me. Like I'll handle first base because not that many
yeah,
left, right? But no, it's really cool, man. I've seen me been in the industry for 13 years. When I first got in the industry, it was a lot of older folks, and I don't mean no disrespect by that, but really
yeah,
seasoned vets. And the more and more people that I'm talking to, and business owners in general, are all kind of I'm going to associate you with my age. Obviously, I'm getting a little bit older, but you're probably younger than me. But just how seeing the moving industry has evolved, especially over the past couple years, with really, really younger, like this younger generation, kind of come in and kind of flipping the script here a little bit. So, kind of with that, kind of another thing I want to kind of lean into, but with the moving industry evolving over the past couple of years between COVID and then you had the crazy 2023 where household was a little bit,
yeah,
below the bar. Thank goodness for commercial moves, right? So any
yeah.
commercial mover I spoke with were like, oh, 2023 was great, but any household mover I talked to, they're like, man, I got to get into commercial, right? So any notable changes or trends that you've specifically observed, like especially when it comes to like commercial moves or the amount of commercial moves that are coming your guys' way? Has there been any changes, sort of say, with over the past couple years? With your
Absolutely.
young fresh mind here, I'd love to love to hear it.
No, so it's like you said, like in 2021 or 2022, it was more focused on decommissions, reconfigurations, and we were busy. I mean, we've been busy since I started post college. Like we've always been busy. But going into 2023 and 2024, I'm seeing a change, and I think the industry as a whole, I don't think it ever slowed down, but I think it's picking up more than ever and coming back in a very strong way, where I'm seeing a lot of receive, deliver, install projects of new furniture. I'm seeing a lot of initiatives where people are moving back to work. A lot of, especially in the federal government space here in the DC area, we're seeing a lot of people have a lot of back to work initiatives. A lot of people are buying new furniture. They're renovating spaces. So there's still those decoms because they're clearing out spaces to bring in new space, to bring in the new stuff. But we're seeing a lot more where before I felt like, back in 2021, 2022, or 2020, decom. Like I feel like 75% of my projects were just decommissioning, which are great projects to have. But now it's great to see with this return to work initiative, we're seeing new furniture come in. Obviously, I'm seeing reconfigurations of cubicles. but just a lot of upfits of spaces. And so I still see some decommissions, but I think, yeah, like I said, with the return to work initiative, a lot more new stuff is coming in.
No, that's awesome, man. So you mentioned decommission. I remember when I was in the industry, I felt so bad because we did and I don't want to say the names of these large corporate organizations, but
Yeah.
I get that email and it was like, ooh, holy cow, like this store's been a staple in our town for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And we're going to go in there and basically pull out all the furniture, the racking, the tables, the chairs, it was a little bit, I don't know, man. I got a little sad at some point in times, but at the same time, it's like it was work, right? And it was
Yeah.
really, really good and seemingly pretty profitable work as well. So
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned, are you seeing an uptick in this back to office work now that COVID is kind of like suppressed? So either people are, rejuvenating their offices and getting new furniture, or are they moving to bigger and better locations, or are they paring down and moving to smaller locations, would you say? And that's kind of a lot.
So I'm seeing a mix where overall I do think people are downsizing, but not in a huge way. I mean, a lot, like I said, a lot of receive, deliver, install new furniture, but a lot of people held their spaces, specifically in the federal government, because here in DC, people talk about how this is sort of a recession-proof area because this area is funded by the federal government. So a lot of people did hold their spaces here, whereas I spent 2 years in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was a lot more downsizing in the banking industry, a lot more people working from home. But in the federal government, I think people have done a good job of holding on to their spaces, and now they're coming back. But back to touch on your point on decommissioning, I mean, that encompasses like we have a whole furniture division that resells furniture. So we're not just like, trying to get rid of these items. We're doing a good job of reusing, recycling, reducing our footprint, as well as like selling the furniture. So I agree. It's unfortunate to see a staple in your town get have to go away. But at the same time, if you can donate this stuff to schools, if you can give them to somebody who needs it, it can be a positive thing. But yeah, no, like spaces are getting overall, I'd say in DC saying about the same. Some of the private sector businesses, I am seeing them getting smaller, but I absolutely don't think they're going away. I think that they're just upfitting the space, doing a hybrid work schedule, and I think people seem to be happier from that. And if you work, harder and get your job done, I'm all for whatever makes people happier, and gets as long as the work is getting done. If a hybrid schedule works for the people, then that's great.
Now, man, you brought up a couple points that I want to touch on real quick before I kind of jump into, and one you kind of jumped almost into the question I'm going to ask you, like you're reading the damn mind here. But on that decommissioning aspect, and you brought up a word I really love, is that sustainability aspect.
Absolutely.
And kind of speaking from my role when I was there, what we did with a lot of our decommissioned products is, and again, we worked through a really well-known, I won't leave their name out, but a really well-known university in our area. So we were kind of decommissioning a entire dorm, right? So you had the beds, you had the dressers, you had the side tables, you had those really old, heavy closets that were never really fun getting out and around the corners. But we actually, worked out a deal with those guys that, we would pick it up, we'd bring it back, and then they would ship in a 40-foot container, an ocean container. I think it was a high cube, if I can remember, but we ended up moving that stuff over to Ukraine. With obviously the crisis that was going on, obviously the need of furniture and bedding and mattresses and things like that. So I just feel like there's so many opportunities. So, you think of decommissioning as like, oh, the business is going out, but there's also a lot of benefits to, I don't want to say not a benefit of the business going either, but we can do stuff with that furniture, not just toss it in a landfill or not list it on Craigslist for $2 a chair, but we could send this stuff to people that are truly in need.
Yes.
Potentially another stream of revenue too, if you kind of get into the right charitable organizations. You donate a little bit of work, but hey, they're still fronting the cost of the ocean container and things like that. So kind of jumping right in. I mean, I know you guys do a lot of really cool and amazing things, but specialized services or unique offerings. So I know we mentioned decommissioning, and you said the C word, which I can't absolutely, it drove me nuts. Cubicles, like that's one thing, man, I definitely stayed away from.
Challenge.
We had a company that we utilized there, but especially you got some cubicles that are 10, 15 years old that have been hammered together. 12, every time we tried to do it, it was like
it's like a Richter set, or I don't know the word exactly, but they're very hard to put back together, and it always works out, but it is a challenge.
And it was like, how many times I've been zapped? I'm just like, no, I'm done with this. Like, where's the electrician, and where's the people that know how to do it? We can move anything office wise, but cubicles, I was like, no, can't do this. But what are some unique things that that RCS offers that something that might
So,
be out of the box that some other companies aren't doing or they could
yeah,
leverage to assist in their needs and goals?
absolutely. So outside of commercial relocation and decommission, we have the standard installation, e-cycling. We do a lot of FF&E work.
Ooh, that's my
We do
favorite.
new, yeah. Well, I love FF&E, but that's just me. But we also do new and used furniture, as I mentioned. But something that is really revolutionizing the industry right now, and something that we're working on, is the move management space. We're developing software that we have in house with our part. We have a joint venture. And so with our joint venture, we are specializing in a move management software right now that is really revolutionizing the industry. I can't get too deep into it. I got to keep some things,
Yeah,
close to
yeah.
my vest.
Keep it under the
But
hat.
right now, the move management piece we're working on, the technology is really differentiating us in the marketplace. We have asset management. It's kind of like windfall on steroids, if you will. And I can't get too deep into it right now because that's something that I gotta keep between me and the clients. But that's something that's really taking the area by storm right now is our move management software.
No, man, you made a good point, and I'm not even going to ask you what my next question was. I feel like you're just reading my damn mind here, but I was basically going to ask, like, do you guys incorporate technology and what type of innovation, for your solutions? But we'll skip that one for now, unless you want to beat around the bush with it. But yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I know you guys are
Well,
doing some
so in
amazing things.
addition to
So
asset management, we're doing live like updates of what's going on site on certain projects if the clients require it. But again, I can't get too deep into it. I got to keep it between myself and my clients. I don't want the industry to be too privy to everything I got going on. But we've been introducing it to some clients on the federal side as well as government contracting, and it has really been blowing people away. And I think the technology piece is really the future of the industry where a lot of us have similar trucks. I mean, we have similar, I mean, the uniforms aren't going to really differentiate you, but if you can really push the technology piece and being privy to that aspect of the business, it's really going to differentiate you from the competition and get you into larger projects. So that's something that we're really pushing and advocating for hard right now.
no, I'd say same here. Obviously, coming from a tech driven
Yeah.
company doing some move management software, I'm with
Yeah.
you on that one. But I do want to take one step back because it was some of my most favorite work to do. And it's funny, I talk to when I say hundreds of business company owners weekly, it's literally hundreds weekly. And I always bring up the OS&E and FF&E, and I just throw that out there. And I'm not one that use a lot of acronyms in my day-to-day talk, but I always throw that out, FF&E, OS&E, just to see, hey, do they know the language or are they like, ugh, what is that? And it's kind of mind-boggling that when I'm asking people that, have had 10, 15, 20, 30 years in the industry, like, hey, are you guys monkeying with any FFE or any
Yeah.
OS&E or is doing room in a box, like that cool stuff? They're like, what are you talking about?
Well,
I
it's
just
funny you
will
mentioned
tell
that.
business.
When
What's
I
that?
initially got, well, it's funny you mentioned that because when I initially got to RCS, I didn't even know what hundredweight was, or I didn't even know like the lingo, like the things you're mentioning right now. I didn't honestly. I was a commercial relocation mover. I did decommissions, I did installations, and e-cycling, some of that stuff. But now I'm getting much deeper into the FF&E world where I'm understanding the language. We're doing a lot of that stuff. So it's funny you mentioned that, but that's I really enjoy that space. There's a lot of work there. A lot of like hotels are always flipping every couple of years, and dorm rooms, as you mentioned. So it's a great repeat business to have, and so it's definitely something that I'm trying to get deeper and deeper into.
I loved it because you always get that thing, depending on who the provider was that was giving us the work, it was 250,000 pounds coming in, right? Oh, it's only a 60-day hold, basically. Like, oh, this is going
Yeah,
to happen so quickly. And now the first project, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But what happens is, and as you know, with construction, what happens? There's delays. So that
yeah,
250,000 pounds and that 60-day project turns into a 4 or 5 month project. At least that was us up here in the Northeast. So you got a
yeah.
ton of storage. You end up getting a heck of a lot more product. We did the room in a box piece, which I think was really, really cool. Have you guys dabble into that at all?
So room, no, I'm not familiar with room in a box. I'd love to educate me.
That's it. You just never know, man. I learn stuff every single day here. And
Same.
when I think I've learned it all, I'm like, my gosh, what is room in a box, right? So, once you get all the furniture inside the hotels, so they would ship us the pillows, the shampoos, the safes, little hair nets, the Bibles, everything that you basically, that the loose content that's inside kind of that startup hotel room, And what we did is we take a big old wardrobe box, right? We'd line out all the product in our warehouse and
Sure.
basically put that wardrobe box on a four-wheeler. First thing that went in was the safe because it was the heaviest. And then we go in and, pop in all the boxes of the soaps, the shampoos, the toiletries, and what have you, and followed by the pillow on top, seal the box up, room one, ship it. Room two,
Gotcha.
all the way to X amount of rooms. And what we do is we deliver basically one day we do, hey, floor one and floor two, day two, three, four, all the way up, depending on how many floors that there were. And just drop the box off inside the room. And then the hotel staff would take it from there. Crazy easy money. And it's a lot of fun just pushing wardrobe boxes full of shampoo and safes, light
Yeah.
safes right on down. But it's another avenue of, another stream, sort of say, within that FF&E space. And,
Sure.
it's crazy how you just take a call one day because we were not in this space at all back when I was in seat. I remember I took the first call and they were like, and again, I won't leave the company's name. We got a great relationship with them, but they had no idea what they were getting into when they were getting me on the phone. They were just like, hey, you guys do FF&E, OS&E? Mind you, I was like 3.5, 4 years in the business. I'm like, oh yeah, sales guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I got 370,000 pounds or whatever the number was coming over to you. I just need
Yeah.
your this rate, that rate. And I'm like, oh God, what I dive into? Um,
Yes.
we set up a couple calls with the organization. That's when I realized, like, wow, how many companies actually dabble in the space that are not organized? Because they
Yeah.
were they were impressed and blown away that we wanted to sit down, have a call with them, kind of a meet and greet, say, hey, what's the, I don't say the pecking order, sort of say, but hey, throughout the project, if I have a one-off, who do I call? If I can't get there, where do I go? So we really dialed this in and created a great partnership for us, and it actually ended up being a really good stream that we ended up diving into. We ended up doing like 4 hotels over 2 years, which for us is in the Northeast, kind of small rural area. If
Well,
a hotel was being built or getting renovated, you better believe we were there. And it was just so
absolutely.
cool to be a part of.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I think it's really important. Something I always like to talk about when you get into these new spaces, like if you're not familiar with, disconnect, reconnect, or FF&E or e-cycling, if you don't fully understand something, the importance in this industry of having mentors.
Yes.
So for me, I've always kind of confided in a couple different mentors throughout my career who I still keep up with very regularly. Who, if I ever don't know, you got to ask. And it's important to have those people you can trust and to help you with the process early on so then you can run with it later. I don't know about your experience, but for me, that was extremely important to get to that level.
No, it was huge. I tell you, once we really got into the commercial aspect, because when I first started in the organization, if I can remember, we were like 80-20. So 80% household, right? I mean, we were local moves, interstate, doing a lot of United Van Lines moves. We dabbled in
Yeah,
some military. Commercial was very, very minimal. I mean, 20%, if that. And really, it wasn't big projects, right? You're moving a couple dorm rooms here and there or what have you. But by the time I left, we were almost in the complete reverse. We
yeah,
were just about 80% commercial, 20% household. And even when I say household, is mostly just account work, I would say. You kind of fill in the gaps between here and there with a nice intra or really good interstate that you can self-haul. But it just opened up the doors, and for us it was easier, it was less beat up on the guys, and just feel like that's the wave. I mean, you got to be diversified as it is anyway. You
yes,
can't just pick one line because each line of business, and one of my mentors, still chat with him today there, and I work for him, but he always had this statement where every line has its own season, right? So the hotels
yeah,
are going to be done in the wintertime because people aren't staying in hotels in the wintertime as much as they do in the summer when they're on vacation and what have you. And the dorm work's going to be there.
yeah,
The kids are out of school, but the thing is, you can't market and try to bid on something once the kids are out of school. You've got to hit the right times. You've got to be there in the right place. So just kind of working that backwards and getting it all
yeah,
dialed in. I just wish more moving companies would diversify and kind of get into this space. You probably don't want
yes.
that, but when I'm making these calls, it's just like, man, I feel so bad. You only have 5 jobs on the board for the month of January. Like,
Wow.
and I bring up the commercial word, the C word as they call it, and they're like, no, we
Yeah,
don't have the proof for that. And I'm thinking, commercial is easy, but not to get sidetracked, but one of my other mentors, I would say, and he's became I would say a pretty damn good friend over the
yeah,
past couple of years. But Ed Katz, who doesn't know Ed Katz? I would say, and his
huge
IOMI
fan.
program, and his program is great. I encourage everybody to, and this is, plug to Ed Katz. I'm sure he'll be watching this here, and I hope to see you soon, Ed, if you are watching. But, such a great guy, and just how he simplifies everything down. And, you don't have to run up to the top floor and come back. Like, set yourself up for success. And also, what I
And
like about Ed Katz is like, it's okay to say no.
yeah.
Don't set yourself up for extreme failure and try to be the hero, what have you. Do what you do well and knock it out of the park. And yeah, Ed, I follow everything he does. He writes, he types, and just a brilliant guy. He's been there and done that. You want to talk about trials and tribulations, sort of say. That's a man that's been there, done that, and that's why he is who he is today.
No, it's funny you mentioned that. I am a huge fan of Ed Katz. I took the IOMI classes earlier on in my career, and like as starting as an intern, like right out of college, that's what they put me on the fast track to do IOMI and inventory and learn and understand his process. And I use it today. I use it every single day. And it's actually funny because I'm in a young leaders networking group within my industry. And he came on one day and everybody was like not really paying it. He sometimes he'll say something ridiculous in a meeting because he's trying to see if you're paying attention.
Yeah, are you listening to him or not?
He'll like put a picture on the screen and you're like, did you mean to do that? Because he's trying to see if you're like engaged. And I was like, at the end of the meeting, I was like, Ed, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a huge fan. I did 300 or 225 bids last year. And I used IOMI on every single one, and I was within the 90% accuracy range. And it's funny because he's friends with Vince, my old baseball coach, and such a classy guy. He actually wrote me a handwritten letter and sent it to my house about how appreciative he was. And people they just don't make people like that anymore who put that touch onto things like writing a handwritten letter to their clients that they appreciate. And I'm talking about it right now, and I really appreciated that he did that for me. And I'm a huge fan, and really great guy, industry legend. I'm
He's
a
awesome,
huge
man.
advocate.
Now I got to ask you. So when you graduated the class, did you get your Rock of Gibraltar that he sent? He said he sent
No.
little stones.
So the way it worked with JK when I was there is they paid to have like they were members and like they paid to have the programs and stuff. So I would read through the books. So I guess I'm not technically certified. I don't want to say like I
Oh,
guess
so
I'm
you know
not
what?
technically officially certified, which is a kind of I don't know, maybe I should be, but I've taken all the courses and everything.
And I tell you, that's how I really feel like I became to know Ed. I would say at that point, I went through my course, I answered a couple questions wrong or what have you, and finally it was like, yes, you passed, and I'm like, yes, because it was a little bit of work to put into it,
Yeah.
to get because it was different from what I was used to doing. So not saying I wasn't doing things correctly, but he just put a whole new spin and view on things.
Yeah.
It's different from the household side. So household side, my mind was pack the truck like Tetris. For us
Yeah.
in the commercial side, it was float and go, baby. We got to get it on, we got to get it off, get that rotation going. But when I
Yeah.
finished, it said I was going to get my rock. And everybody in our office, they got the handwritten letter. Thank you for, passing and taking the course with a little rock of Gibraltar, because that's at the end of his training course. I never got my rock. So
Really?
So I reached out to Ed and I was like, Ed, in a joking way, like, and I still have the rock today. I collect rocks for some weird reason. Every place I go, I grab like a little pebble or something. So
Yeah.
Ed is a part of the rock collection, but I call him. I'm like, Ed, where is my rock, my man? Like everybody here in the office. And I was being real joking and very loose. And I just feel like we just hit it off right then and there. And he's like, I will send you your rock. Don't you worry. And of course, the back of my head, I'm like, he is not going to take the time to send me a rock.
Yeah. And
You better believe it was like 4 days later. I think he might even sent the damn thing certified mail to make sure I had to sign for it to get it. But just, man of his word, did what he did. And I finally had the pleasure of meeting him live. We got to turn this into the Ed Katz show here. I might have to bring him on one of these times, but got to meet him in New York and, a couple sit down conversations. And, a man of his age, he still has the energy. He still has the passion and just the all out love for not just the industry, but for the people in the industry. So,
yes.
Shout out to you, Ed Katz. We all love you.
Absolutely. And I guess the last thing don't want to make it the Ed Katz show, but the last thing is like with IOMI, you can show your work to the customer if they ever ask, how did you get to that number? And you can show them a mathematical formula of how you got to that number. Not that, I just have experience and I went in there and 6 guys and 8 trucks, 6 guys and 2 trucks. I just know. I can be like, I know the push. I know the volume, I calculated the truckloads, I calculated the manpower, I added the install timing, and I can break that down for you mathematically and tell you exactly how I got to my number. And that's got me out of a lot of situations. And it's very interesting to be able to do that and show the client you're not just throwing out a number, you're able to get to that number via a formula. And I think that's a good
I
thing
think
also
that's
to,
huge.
yeah.
Yeah, huge for two reasons that come to mind. One is obviously we had this online conference last Wednesday, and the number one thing that, or actually it was like 76% of people said they want transparency in pricing. Now, this was on the household side, but to me, transparency is transparency in general. So the ability to basically walk through a space, have consistent the way you view it, whoever views it, that kind of that consistency, but the ability to be transparent in that pricing, where if the customer is like, well, hey, how did you get to this? Well, you can walk them right down. And actually, I turned his formula. I ended up putting that on my iPad, so I could do the easy value on there. Just made it a little bit easier for me because again, I was a tablet guy versus a cube sheet guy.
Same.
But
I'm a tablet guy too. Yeah.
so the transparency, basically, in the pricing, but also consistency, where hey, it's Tom doing it this way, and then Ryan goes and looks at a commercial move this way, and Harrison or Alec, they look at it this way. No, we're all looking at this together the same way. So transparency, consistency. I mean, those are the two big things that were my takeaways. Inefficiency too. Let's face it. It was we were so much more efficient.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, if a project ever, sometimes projects don't go perfectly, but if you didn't back yourself up for pricing transparency on the back end, you could say, look, this is the formula, this is what happened, and sometimes things don't go perfect. It's in this industry, it's very hard to we're in the business of minimizing risk. We're doing everything we can as salespeople on the back end to minimize risk and make the customer feel as comfortable as possible, so that the day of the move, everything goes smoothly and we can take care of what we need to take care of. But if it goes up a little bit in time or goes down a little bit in time, I mean, it's hard to be right on the money every single time. And you can at least understand that you got to something based off of a formula in the event that it takes a little bit longer than it needs to, or if it gets done a little bit quicker, you can, again, show your work is what I like to say. So that's why I'm such a big fan. Besides him being such a good guy, I think the program he has created is very thorough in quality.
Now, if we just get some AI behind that at this point now, so I'd love to work with him on that. Like, hey, just walk through, scan the egress, regress, the dock, the this. You scan the material and just click a button and say, hey, give me Ed Cat's program. But we are running a little bit short on time, Ed. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'd love to do this again, but before I let you go, I always have this thing. I got a couple hot seat questions for you, just for fun. Answer it how you want to answer it, but I always like to try to show just a little bit of something here. But what was your dream job growing up?
Sales. Not even. Oh no. Okay, so when I was like,
you can't tell me your dream. You woke up. You woke up one day and said, "Sales is my dream job."
Well, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a dentist, because I had a friend whose father was a dentist in Charlottesville, and I'm actually going to their farm this weekend. And so they're good friends of mine. I was like, I want to be a dentist. And then I found out how much schooling was behind that. So my dad was a sales manager of 35 plus years. And so, yeah, it was sales. But before that, I wanted to be a dentist.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely didn't grow up and say I want to be in sales. I want to be a baseball player, right? But hindsight 2020. But ultimately, like a fireman was like what I always like loved and wanted to do. And then I volunteered a little bit, and I'm like, no, this ain't for me. Like, always want to do it, but this is an interesting. What movie title best describes your life?
Godfather. Yeah, I'm the Al Pacino of commercial movie. No, I'm just kidding. I just watched that movie last week. First thing that came to mind, so I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah, mine would be if I had to pick them, Backdraft. You ever watch the movie Backdraft with Bull?
No, I'll have to check it out.
It's an old fireman movie. So I guess, my dream job was a fireman, but it's an old fireman movie. And it's basically where like the fire department pulls up and there's this guy setting these backdraft fires. So I guess mine would be, so from the outside, like, cool, calm, collective. But as soon as you open that door, that's when everything blew up. So I guess I would say Backdraft for me right now, the way where I'm.
I know what I'm watching this weekend. I'll check it out.
Yeah, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a cool movie, but it's old school. I think it was set in the 90s. But last question. This is a weird one, but literally weird. What is the weirdest thing you've ever Googled, man?
That's got me. I don't even know. I can't answer that. Weirdest thing I've ever Googled. Um,
You can plead the fifth too, man. Don't
I
worry.
plead the fifth on this one. I'm sorry, man. I can't do that.
No, I'm pleading the fifth as well, but I've asked this question twice now in the podcast, and everyone's the same thing. Like the reaction's like,
It's like
no, I'm not.
one of those things where like someone had you Google something weird in high school, and you're like, oh, like something someone like tried to get you to do. Maybe that, but I can't even say. I can't even say.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate having fun with us in the hot seat here, and thank everybody for tuning in. And yeah, thank you for tuning in for Humans of Moving. We'd love to have you on our show. So, Tom, if you know anybody that wants to pop on, friends, family, whatever the
Absolutely.
case is, or anybody listening, if you're a mover, a shaker, or just passionate about the industry like we are, Tom and I are here, send us an email at info@supermove.com or just hit me up on LinkedIn. Would love to have you on the show. But we'll chat with you all soon.